Welcome to Engineering Influence, the podcast from the American Council of Engineering Companies, coming to you from our 2025 Annual Convention and Legislative Summit in Washington, D.C. And it's been a packed schedule of events. We've been talking politics, we've been talking policy, and also business. And I want to kind of focus in on the business side right now with our guest, Ed Alizadeh. He is with UES out of St. Louis, Missouri. And we're talking M&A, and we're talking about private equity, something which is becoming increasingly seen throughout our industry. Give us a little background of your experience with PE and how that has kind of you've seen kind of impacting the industry.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It's good to be here.
Appreciate
it. My experience is in this industry has gone on for 35, almost 40 years now. And for most of that time, I would have viewed PE as kind of an evil thing that, we don't want any part of that. And they just load up firms with debt and they try to suck some profit out and then they move on. And I just, I think it has evolved quite a bit. We grew our firm Geotechnology up until 2021, and we had made some acquisitions of our own, and then we came to a point where it made sense to listen to some of these folks that were out there talking and in the PE world, and we went through a process to kind of vet and make sure we partnered up with the right firm, and we joined UES in 2021. And I think now, the more sophisticated PE-backed firms are building a company. They realize the value is really in all the people, the engineers. It's all about growth. So in any of the acquisitions we've done, there's never been any, we're going to get rid of these 5 people to help juice up our profits. It's how are we going to add and how are we going to grow the business and how are we going to accelerate what was already a good company in geotechnology or Contour or other groups that have joined UES.
Yeah, you raise a good point because in the early days, I guess, of mergers and acquisitions and the entrance of private equity into the industry, it was kind of that whole creative destruction idea. We're going to acquire and we're going to just kind of carve out what we want and then discard whatever else we don't need. But it is more of that. Okay, how can we strategically grow, add to our product market lines, and how do we actually become a larger, more successful firm in the process, right? What about the transition? How was your transition into the larger entity? They always the concern of that culture issue of having a company that might have been around for a lot of years, was owned privately, and now is part of a larger organism. What was your experience like, and how have you seen the acquisition process at UES?
Yeah, so it's really an important topic as you're building a company where we are putting together. We've put together over 20 different firms at this point, and Geotechnology, the firm that I was running, we were the entry into the Midwest for UES. So we were operating in 8 states. And I had 250 people or so. So it really wasn't a big change for us at the beginning because I became the Midwest region president. We wanted to grow that business in the Midwest. And really, big part of why we joined UES was this was going to allow us to do what we wanted to do, but faster. And so we have added 3 other firms in the Midwest since then, built that up to 400 folks or so, and we're trying to build the Midwest into a $100 million operation for a region. So that our experience was pretty easy because I immediately became region president. I was part of the leadership team with UES. But now, if you look at those firms that joined us in the Midwest, now they're not going to be the platform firm for the Midwest or whatever. So that's where we've really evolved and really worked hard on this integration part of it. And it's a 2-way process. We like to say we don't do things to you as a new firm. We do things with you. And so we try to work together to figure out, all right, how are we going to make this firm fit in the best? How are we going to make this leader of that firm fit in with with UES and put them in the best position to succeed. So I think every situation has to be unique.
Yes.
And you can have a playbook to an extent, and we have an integration team that helps, but every situation is unique, and realizing that and working to figure out how best to fit that particular firm in is really important.
Yeah, I would imagine as a firm leader and an independent firm that is, getting to the point where their leadership is saying we should open our minds to the conversation of going into the M&A process and actually saying, do we want to become part of a larger thing? That the culture of the company that they're going to partner with is critically important. It sounds like UES kind of separates itself from the pack by looking at that. How are we going to grow? How are we going to take your talents and add it to the whole instead of, just kind of break it down? I mean, that's critical. It's you've seen both sides of the coin. What do you think that firm leaders who are opening up to the idea of private equity, what was the couple of things that they should really watch out for immediately with, possible partners?
Yeah. Well, I think that one thing is the way I look at it is we want to maintain entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
So these firms we're adding, we're not interested in fixer-up firms. We're buying firms that are successful firms already, and so we want to help maintain that entrepreneurial spirit, but take advantage of scale and technical excellence and leadership, and so. It's I think for a firm that's looking at joining somebody larger, that's something really important to see, that it's not going to be we're going to jam our systems down your throat and our way's the best way. We like to look at it as we're not conquering heroes.
Yeah.
Everybody's got some really good skills. They've got best practices. So we try to look at both and say, all right, well, Jeff's firm's got their process for accounts receivable or for sales or for geotechnical, whatever is the best. Let's
integrate that in and bring it in.
Yeah.
I would imagine it helps you also with longstanding relationships with clients to be able to say, we had this suite of services that we were able to do, but now we have this suite plus all these other resources, being able to pull from the other portions of UES into the work that you're doing.
So part of it, that's exactly right, Jeff. Yeah. And for us, for that client benefit, it's geographic. So we were just in the Midwest before. Now we can help clients around the country. UES been working hard to get MSAs in place with big clients so that we are able to make it easy for the client to work with us. And then we've added some particular technical expertise. So we've added Dan Brown and Associates, for example, which is a deep foundation expert firm and based in Tennessee, but they're national. We're able to utilize their resources everywhere. We just recently added Marino and Associates, which is a subsurface, or a subsidence engineering specialty firm. So we're able to now take that nationwide, whereas Marino was a very small firm, but with great expertise. Now we're able to leverage that and benefit our clients all over the country.
So that's really a benefit to clients because you're able to actually deal with a project through, there's not much that you can't do now. You can say that, okay, this is a problem. Yeah, before we might not have been able to do this, but now we can actually leverage this expertise and bring them in and solve the problems better. So it's a better value for client.
Well, staying within our adjacencies, we like to say, we're
of
staying in where the kind of the market allows us, or there's market acceptance. So we're not looking to do civil engineering or structural engineering that competes with our clients in any way, because the other engineering firms are big clients for us as geotech, environmental materials testing firm. We frequently are a sub to a large AE firm.
Absolutely. So, it's one of those things where we're looking at it from, we're looking at the industry and seeing M&A, kind of really becoming a real factor in the industry. I mean, do you think that this is going to, is it now the new normal? Do you think that this is going to be here to stay, that it's not just a short term, but not short term, but looking at short term in markets, 10 years plus, a kind of a aberration, or you think that this is the new way of doing things?
I think M&A has been part of the landscape for a long time, and now the entry of some PE and family office type of money into the equation is newer.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's fundamentally different than what it has been, and I think there's always been this notion that, or as long as I've been in the industry, there've been talk about, well, these middle market firms aren't going to be able to make it or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's new firms that spring up all the time, and we see that at ACEC. There's many of our member firms are very small firms. So I think we're at a time and place where there is a lot of PE and family office money that's looking for a home, and our industry is attractive because we do, we're generally profitable. We don't have huge highs, and necessarily we don't have huge lows, and that's attractive.
There's always a need for an engineer.
That's right.
And that's the biggest thing, especially for those firms out there that are looking at succession planning, looking at what comes next. The industry is changing. We're seeing, that next generation, what's it going to be? Will these smaller firms not close their doors, but instead open themselves up for potential acquisition? It's really something that is of interest to us. Do you think that, what would you like ACEC to be doing a little bit more to kind of help guide through this process? Do you think that there's an avenue here for education that we should take advantage of?
Well, I think ACEC there's a lot of education already. If you look at the program for this meeting we're sitting at, there's a number of different sessions on how to integrate firms. There's usually sessions. I don't remember if there is this one on valuation and what's going on in the
generally. Even though it's a legislative conference, we still have a ton of business programming.
So I think it's there, and we understand that the different professional organizations fill different roles, and ACEC is the voice of
business, the business of engineering.
Business, right? So, and that's what we look to ACEC for, and I think ACEC does a great job at that. I don't think there's a missing part of the equation that I see from ACEC.
Yeah. Well, thanks for taking the time. It's an interesting topic. I think it's one that we need to dig into a little bit more. Our private market intelligence team, Diana Thomas and that group, is doing a lot more. The Institute's doing a lot more as well. So look to see our depth of research and resources on this topic kind of grow. So
you mentioned the market intelligence. I think that's something that I really value. We have senior leadership meetings in UES, and I kind of the ACEC advocate for the group. So I gave a presentation to our senior leadership team about the market intelligence and how we can use that.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that, because that's the idea of it, right? Yeah. It's that we want to give people actionable intelligence for short-term play. Like, we have if anybody's like, okay, we got market intelligence, then you have the Institute. And I think the break is the market intelligence is for actionable short-term planning, strategic planning, while the Institute's more for long-term forecasting, right? Yeah. Firm of the future, what are we going to look like 10 years down the line? Market intelligence, here are the market moves right now that we can look at and forecast in the short term.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in the Research Institute. My wife and I have been donors to that for a long time, and since the beginning, and I'm looking forward to coming back here in 3 weeks and working more on the
through the future,
which is a really interesting project.
Coming right back, talking about what that's going to look like. I think that, the research that they've been doing on AI, the research that they've been doing on just the stuff that the visioning session in Boston not too long ago, all the work that's being done through
Design
the Enable Group, Design Build, you've got all that. It's really going to help firm leaders kind of figure out what the future is going to look like for the industry. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ed, thanks again for taking the time.
It's my pleasure, Jeff.
Wonderful. And again, this has been Engineering Influence, podcast from the American Council of Engineering Companies, and we will see you next time.